heavy lunch, everyone is feeling sleepy or? Yeah, we are almost in the last few hours of our DMCon. So thanks for sticking around. So without further delay, let's get started. So how many of you heard about this tool called StackStorm? Okay, so yeah, it's going to be an interesting one. So about me, yeah, thanks for the wonderful introduction. So yeah, if you want to see some of my articles, you can go to my blog, Ansil.com. And I had an old, kind of an archived blog that is kubernetes.ansil.com that I did way back in 2019. So what is the difference between event and a notification? So an event is a change in a system. That means if something happens to a system, that's an event. So in Kubernetes, you have a command called Kubernetes kubectl get events. So you'll see all the events. So then what is notification? So notification is something that is letting you know something happened. That happens when an event occurs. So what is event-driven automation? So event-driven automation means when something happens, you'll get an alert. Then usually an operator is going to handle that alert. So they'll get a page or a Slack, and they'll log into the system and check what is happening. And if something wrong, then they will take some action, right? So in a busy system or a busy environment, you will have hundreds of notifications coming in. So it may not be possible to take action on each of those manually. So you need some automation around it. So today we are going to talk about event-driven automation using StackStorm. So there is a small story time. So there is an application developer who developed an application using Golang. And if you know Golang, people will include a package called preprof or pprof that is used for collecting debug info during runtime. So just like you can execute top command to see what is happening inside the Linux system, you can use pprof to collect some of the CPU, memory, and a few other parameters of the application. So how it is used. So the application is deployed in Kubernetes cluster, and there is observability configured. That means we have, for example, Kubernetes, Prometheus, and Grafana configured, and you have alert manager that is alerting. And there is an alert configured to fire when a pod memory usage reaches 70% of its limit. So in Kubernetes, you can set limits. That means how much the application can use. That means, for example, the application should not exceed more than 1 GB of memory usage. So if it exceeds more than 1 GB of memory, what will happen? It will slow down. It will slow down, or it will get killed. It will restart. It will get killed out of memory, right? The famous OAM kill. So the system will kill that particular container. So when the memory reaches 70% of the limit, the on-call person gets a notification saying that, hey, this application is reaching its memory limit. It is close to 70% now. In time, it can reach 100% and get killed. So the developer log into the system. Oh, sorry, the person who got the notification acknowledged the alert, log into the system, and he's checking what is happening. And he said, yeah, it is beyond his control. He needs the help from the application developer. He engaged the application developer. What happens? Oops. So you page the developer in the middle of the night. And by the time the developer comes in, the board got restarted. So now the developer is angry because he lost his night, because he would awaken in the middle of the night. And yeah, there is no excuse, right? So what we can do in this scenario? So what kind of automation we can bring in? So you need the understanding from both the developer and the operations or the SRE team. So it has to be, they have to think from a DevOps mindset. So here, we can use StackStorm. That is event-driven automation. So StackStorm is a platform for integration and automation across services and tools. It ties together your existing infrastructure and application environment, so you can more easily automate that environment. It has particular focus on taking action in response to events. That's what we are talking about, right? So this particular tool is part of the Linux Foundation. So the CNCF Foundation is actually managed by the Linux Foundation. So there are Linux Foundation projects, just like CNCF projects. You can go to the Linux Foundation project page and you can see StackStorm. It's a very old, mature project. And if you go to the case studies, you can see Netflix is one of the adopters. They used StackStorm as their automation engine. Of course, they created some wrappers around it, but under the hood, it is StackStorm. So here is the architecture. I'm not going to explain what is inside the architecture at all. So we'll simplify it a little bit so that you can understand what is happening, because most of you don't know anything about this tool. So yeah, I'm not going in depth on any of the architecture. We'll straight away go to the UI. So if you once you log into the StackStorm UI, you will see something called an action. So you can see this marked as 1. So if you click on it, you can see there is something called labs which I created. All my automations are packed inside that labs underscore SR. So if you are creating for your own company, you can make it like company X underscore something. Or if you have a different team who need a pack, a set of automation, they can create their own pack. We'll come to that, how to create the pack and all. So I have an action called list pods. So even StackStorm can be used for giving access to the developers. For example, if you want to give a Kubernetes specific command access, so you can actually automate it through StackStorm and give access to StackStorm. They can execute that particular workflow and they will get the output. So suppose they want to list or see all the pods running in a particular namespace or all the namespaces, you can write it. So yeah, so once you select it, you can click on run. That will run that particular workflow. You will get the alert like this. Oh, sorry, the output like this. So you can see the board name, board IP address, and a few other details, whatever you need. And it also keeps a history. So that means you can easily audit what users are doing. The other one is rules. Rules are like that is where the actual event-driven automation comes into the picture. So if there is a webhook got involved, so you can see on the left-hand side 4 and 5. So if and then. If there is a webhook that is called with particular condition, then that particular action will be executed. That's what it says. So that means if the webhook is still called, that action which is x underscore board, that action will be executed. So we write all those things. It will never be there by default. So I'll show you how to get all the things in. So this is called the packs. So suppose you have more than one automation, you can combine all those things into one pack. So and you can register it with StackStorm. So here is the contents of a StackStorm pack. So the important ones are action and rules. There is a pack.yaml, there is a requirement.xx, there is an icon. So I have used the same structure. I don't have anything else, just action, rules, pack, requirements, and icon.png. Those are the few things I have. And this requirement.txt, you know where this requirement.txt comes in? Anyone familiar with this file? Yeah, Python. So yeah, so Python, StackStorm is completely on Python. It's developed with the Python, so anyone who knows Python, it will be very easy for you to master that. You need some third-party tools or third-party packages for your automation. You can include that in the requirements.txt. So for Kubernetes have a Python SDK, and you can include that. And for AWS, there is an SDK, the Photo 3. You can include that and you can write your own automation. So in that pack, you can see there are two directories, one action, there is one rule. And the third one is, you can see there is a Python file and a YAML file. So YAML file you already know, because if you are working on Kubernetes, if you are familiar with Kubernetes, then YAML is not a stranger. So if you look at it, if you are creating a workflow, there has to be a YAML file and a corresponding Python file. YAML file will be the one that will act as a metadata for StackStorm, and Python will be the actual program that will be executed. So the YAML file will tell StackStorm what to do. And there are some libraries you can write. So I wrote one for my usage. So this case.py is my abstraction package which I wrote, but under the hood is still calling the upstream Kubernetes Python library. And there is a rules directory which will contain the webhooks. So you can create webhooks. Not just webhooks, so there is something called triggers. So for the sake of simplicity, we'll say the rules are used for creating webhooks, and that is one of the use cases. So the action YAML will look like this. The name, the runtime type. The runtime type says Python script. So you write a Python program, and you'll tell the StackStorm that, hey, this program is a Python wants to use Python runner script or Python runner. You can even write programs in Bash, and you can use shell if you want. And the description, whether it is enabled or not. Then the entry point. What should be the first program that it should execute when this workflow is getting called? So it will be list_all.py. That is the program, Python program that will get executed. The Python program will look like this. The important line is this from st2 common. So that's a common Python package you can use. You don't have to know about what is happening inside. All you need to know is you need a child class from that action, and there should be a method called run. And it has to return a status. These are the fundamental criteria for writing an action. So here what I'm doing, I'm actually calling libs.ks.list pods. That I wrote. That means it's going to list all the pods inside the Kubernetes system. And it is going to use some data formatting package called textable, and it is pretty to the UI. So that's what all it does. So in few lines of code, you can actually get pretty good output or an intuitive UI experience for your developers. So the next one is rules. Rules is kind of, it may not be that easy, but if you slice it down, it is very easy to understand. So the first few lines, you already know what I said it says. The other one is trigger type. So we tell StackStorm that the trigger type is st2.webhook. This particular rule says create a webhook. That's what it says. And we say the URL should be default. So the resulting URL will come like this. If you are running StackStorm in st2.ansil.io, that is my lab, and the webhook will look like this. So you can actually call this webhook from your applications or from any integration. Then when the webhook gets invoked with a payload, that payload will be matched by this criteria. In this criteria, we'll say the body of that particular payload, and that will be checked against a pattern called the pod memory limit. So I can give you the scenario how I derived this. So I have a Grafana, and this Grafana is configured with an alert. That alert is going to invoke this webhook. When the alert happens, the alert will be fired to this webhook. That webhook will have a JSON payload. That payload will have this alert pattern. If that alert pattern is matching with the payload, then the action will be executed. So the action will be exec_pod, which I wrote in my action. So what that exec pod is expecting, it is expecting some input, right? So when the alert gets fired, it needs to know which pod it is, which namespace, which cluster. So you can include as much information as possible in your alerting mechanism. But for the simplicity, I just hardcoded the namespace and I'm extracting just the pod name. So this pod name and the namespace will be passed to that particular action. So that is what it does. So when you submit this rule to StackStorm, it is going to create a webhook. And when someone invokes that webhook with a payload that has a matching pattern of pod memory limit, then this action pod exec will get executed. So how I am developing it, I have my own local Git. So in your company, you might have a version control system. So you can use those. So in that way, you can have a peer review who is doing what. And if a developer want to push some automation, so you can review it. So that will get accepted. So of course, in an enterprise setup, you'll be running StackStorm in a microservice architecture. That means it will be in Kubernetes, but it can be installed in bare metal systems like in a VM, and even it have a Docker compose method as well. You can write out locally. So when you write it locally, you can test it. When everything is good, you can push to this repo, and the automation will take care of the rest. So I have a Jenkins automation that actually picks up the changes which I pushed. It is going to create a build and push SU2 image that is almost in the middle, you can see. So that image will be built using the changes which I supplied. So remember, I have shown you there is a structure to the pack. There is action, rules, there are requirements.txt, and all the things, right? So along with that, there will be a Docker file. That Docker file will actually install the packages needed from the requirements.txt, and it will create one Docker image, and it will be pushed into the registry, which is configured. And this pipeline also does one more thing, which will tag the image on the Helm chart, which I used. This Helm chart is again on Git in my system, my place, and that will be synced using StackStorm. So that means I don't have to touch anywhere else. So once the changes or when the pack is submitted, the image is going to get built by Jenkins, and the Argosy is going to sync the changes. So that means it's all automated pipeline. So once you set it up, you don't have to do any manual changes for StackStorm. So once it is started working, your workflows are working, it is very easy to push new automation workflows to StackStorm. So let's get into the demo. Yeah. Okay, then we have enough time. So I just want to show you some of the capabilities. So the same scenario we discussed. So here you can see it's the memory usage of a pod. Now it is using very less memory, and here I'm going to put some payloads so that it will allocate some more memory. That's what it does. It is giving some data to dash people. So let's wait for a few seconds. The memory usage is going to go shoot up. So pod memory limit is green. There is nothing there. The alerts are green. So yeah, we are waiting for the alert to get fired. Yeah, the memory usage is going up. Then ideally we should get an alert. So the alert is in pending state. So if you're familiar with Prometheus, then you know there is a evaluation period. Till that time the alert will be in pending state, then only it is going to be fired. Till that time everyone will be happy, nothing is happening. So now you can see it is in pending state. It is not yet fired, you can see the yellow color there. So after a minute, the pending will change to alerting. So you can see this alert payload have the pod name in it. So using the expressions, we are actually sending the pod name to the configured webhook. So if you come here, if you closely watch, there is a automation running now. That is getting automatically invoked by that alert. And the output is done. I mean, it says everything is done. If I go to the object store, which I configured to store the heap dump, you can see that there. You can download it. So you can give this to the developer. Developer will download it, and they can use the go to bprof command to generate a report about what was happening inside that particular application when there was a high memory usage. So you can see the store people handler have two calls, both of them to more than 300 MB of memory. So this will give the developer what was happening when the memory usage was high. So this happens, yeah, here is another one. So you can see that if then thing which I mentioned earlier. So there is another one called list pod. I think exec pod will take two parameters, pod and namespace. The other one is list pod. We can execute this list pod as I mentioned, just to list all the pods in your Kubernetes cluster. So likewise, you can give per namespace access, and even you can give permission to execute commands inside the pod. So all sort of thing you can do. So the tool is very versatile, very flexible. If you are good at Python, and if you know the infrastructure very well, then you can automate anything. So all you need is a hook and a payload and a backend program that can understand the payload and do some action. So you might be wondering how the authentication is happening, right? So if you're running, most of the systems will be using cloud. So in cloud, you can use the identity-based management, or IRC in AWS you can use. So if you give proper IRC permission to the StackStorm runner pod, the runner pod can take action on the AWS. So you don't have to give any additional permission, so you can keep the zero trust. So of course, everything is audited. You will keep track of all the history. So yeah, so and we are running it in production. So it's been a wonderful journey for me. So there is one catch though. The authentication mechanism supported by StackStorm is still very limited. It supports LDAP and some basic authentication, but if you need some custom authentication like SAML or OIDC, it's still not supported, but you can write your own authentication mechanism. So I wrote my own because Cisco need OIDC authentication using Neo. So we had to write our own authentication backend for StackStorm, and yeah, it is working fine. So it is using something called a JWT token in the backend. So once that again is documented in their StackStorm website. Yeah, that's about it. So any question?
You were talking about a Grafana quality StackStorm. So in my case, my observability tool is EFT. Can I use it along EFT?
Yeah, so of course. There is one more thing I want to show you. I hope I don't have internet.
Bro.
So how many minutes left? 5 minutes? Okay, 4 minutes. Yeah, I think I can quickly show that. That will be beneficial for everyone. There is something called StackStorm Exchange. So you can go there and you can find many people actually wrote the patch. You don't have to write your own. You can go to exchange.stackstorm.org and you can find the matching pack that you need for your integration. Of course, you can customize it. Everything is open source. So there will be a GitHub repo linked to each of these projects. You can go there, you can grab a copy of it, you can customize it, push to your environment. Yeah, have fun. Any other question? Okay, so I hope I didn't bore you guys. So thanks for sticking around.
Okay, all right. Thank you for that session. Like we kept.